We are starting a new series called the Property Playbook, where we're going to be unpacking individual property strategies, giving them a rating, and looking at multiple strategies over these episodes to unpack which is the best property strategy for you to use as a playbook in your investing journey. So this is the Property Playbook. How can I make money in property? Where I reveal every strategy, and we're going to go through 2 strategies in today's video. So for the 2 strategies we are covering today, we're going to be answering these questions. Number 1, what is the strategy itself? What's it called? How does the strategy work? What are the pros and cons of the strategy? And then we're going to give it a rating out of 10. So we can rank these as these series release. We can rank the best strategies and the worst strategies in your own property playbook. Now, every strategy is going to have a bunch of different variations depending on the deal, but we're going to broadly rate these strategies across the following categories on screen. So, how capital intensive is the strategy? How much knowledge do I need to execute the strategy? How difficult is this strategy in general? What is the capital growth potential? What is the cash flow or income potential of the strategy? And how scalable is this strategy? Can I repeat the strategy over and over again over a 5 to 10 year period to make massive amounts of wealth in the property playbook? These are the questions we're going to answer. It's also important to remember that just because I give a strategy a higher or lower rating out of 10, that it's not necessarily the right strategy for you. These strategies are customized to your own circumstances and situation, and particularly your finances and your risk tolerance. So it's very important that you evaluate your own circumstances against the strategies out there to actually give the right strategy for your specific circumstances so you can make the right choices for you. The first strategy is called the owner-occupier, and it's as old as real estate itself. Now, the idea of this strategy is to upgrade your home over time. You start with the workers' cottage, you get to the family home, and then you get to the McMansion. So start with what you can afford, and for a lot of people these days, that would be break into the market in a unit or a townhouse. And as your income increases and your equity increases, leverage and trade up to a better quality property over time. This is the bulk of the Australian market. This is 70% of owner-occupiers in Australia buying and upgrading the family home over their lifetime. Now, given the tax environment that we live in, this is very important for a lot of Aussies because it's a tax-free capital gain. And so given the tax changes in 2026, this strategy has even more merit than it's ever had before. Now let's run through the pros and cons of the owner-occupier. The pros are you've got that security, you've got that roof over your head, giving you a place to live. You've got freedom to, put paintings or put photos up on the walls and renovate as you see fit. You've also got that tax advantage. So being the principal place of residence, being a capital gains tax-free asset is massive for most Aussies, especially with the tax changes we have. The cons are you're having to move to increase your asset base or to increase your portfolio size. So your life might have to change to move assets. The next thing is it's not a scalable strategy. Unless you're really lying to the tax office, you can only have one principal place of residence. So you can't scale this strategy out, and you have to sell your home typically in order to exit the investment and enter back into the market. So you've got those bridging periods or those periods of time where you have to exit your current home to get into the next home. So overall, we give this a rating of 5.8 out of 10. Now let's break this down into the categories. So how capital intensive is it? I think that's a 7 out of 10. How much knowledge do I need? Well, a 9. You really want to pick a good opportunity, and I think it's a lot of owner-occupied properties drive property prices. How difficult is it to pull off? It's not too difficult, probably an 8 out of 10. What's the downside risk level? Well, you get a roof over your head, so an 8 out of 10 there. What is the capital growth potential? Well, most people, again, looking for owner-occupied properties, so an 8 out of 10 there. How likely is it that I can build a 5+ property portfolio with this strategy? I would say 0, unfortunately, because it doesn't scale. So 0 out of 10 there. And what is the cash flow or income potential? Again, you could have a boarder here or there or rent out some rooms, but it's not common with your own home. So 1 out of 10 there. So really performing well initially, but then on the scaling and the cash flow side, it really falls off. So that's how we end up with that rating of 5.8 out of 10. Next on our list is the set and forget strategy, or buy and hold, it used to be called in the early 2000s. This is where you buy a high quality asset with good fundamentals for growth. It's a very growth driven strategy. We're focusing on land, scarcity and size. We're looking at metro locations typically, looking at future infrastructure plans for that area to grow in value, and population growth as well. We want more people to want to buy in these areas in the future until you can set and forget, otherwise known as blue chip assets as well. You can see an image here of a terrace in Melbourne or Sydney, for example. And so the idea is that you're buying high quality assets and holding for a long period of time. You let the market do the heavy lifting on the property, and we're going to be buying at the bottom of a growth cycle so we can maximize the growth over a 7 or 15-year time horizon. Typically, the cycles are every 7 to 10 years, so you might hold these assets through 1 to 2 cycles typically. So let's run through the pros and cons of the set and forget strategy, and then we'll unpack those questions again about the rating that we've landed on. So the pros are buying in a good market will do the heavy lifting for you. If you buy well and hold over a long period of time, you will see success just from compounding growth over that long period of time. Rents can increase over time to improve the cash flow relative to your debt ratios. So rents will creep up with the market. And this can be managed by a property manager. So you can outsource the work to manage the property, making it a close to passive strategy as any property strategy comes to, because some of the other strategies we're going to talk about in this series are a bit more hands-on. Now, some of the cons is you are very dependent on market movement and market growth. So you want to buy in a Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, or Adelaide at the right time. And if you get that wrong, your set and forget strategy does not work. Unless you're a high income earner who can have or manage the negative gearing typically, or the cash flow constraints, serviceability could be an issue to scale this portfolio. And tenant risk is there. Obviously, you're buying a real estate asset, you've got tenant risk, and this depends on the area that you buy in. So if you buy in a high quality area, you can still have tenant risk, but even mid and low socioeconomic areas could bring some risk. There's no more negative gearing on properties moving forward, which does really detract from this set and forget strategy, where a lot of high income individuals are buying houses and getting the negative gearing benefits. So how did we land on a 6.7 out of 10 score? Well, if we go through the categories, capital intensity is probably a 7 out of 10. Knowledge required is not so great. 8 out of 10, you're picking macro cycles. How difficult is it to buy a set and forget property? Not very difficult, 8 out of 10. What's the downside risk? Well, if you take a long time horizon, it lowers the downside risk. So we give that an 8 out of 10. Capital growth potential, again, pretty solid because you're typically holding for 10, 20 years. So 8 out of 10 there. How likely is it that you can build a 5+ property portfolio from this? Probably a 4 out of 10. Unless you're a really high income earner, most people are going to struggle just using this strategy to scale a portfolio. What about the cash flow or income? Again, probably a 4 out of 10 because you're getting some cash flow. It is paying for some of the debt, and that will scale over a long period of time, as we spoke about with that cash flow improving to debt. But as far as being a cash flow strategy, it's not really there. And that's how we landed on that rating of 6.7 out of 10 if you're doing the set and forget strategy. Based on these two strategies that we've evaluated today, owner occupier or set and forget, which would you pick in this current market? I mean, even though I gave a lower rating to the owner occupied strategy, I actually think sinking 2, 3, 4 million into your own home and holding that for a decade makes more sense than the set and forget. It's not as scalable, and so there's pros and cons to each. But if it was me, even though I gave it the slightly lower rating, I would actually be going for that strategy myself, based on where I'm at in my journey. So which of these two strategies would you pick? And I can't wait to share with you more property playbook strategies in the future. Give this video a click right here because that's the one you should watch next. And if you're interested in buying in Queensland or Victoria, head over to purposeproperty.com.au to book in a chat with myself. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.